So make sure you have a weekday festival book, which is not in the pews. I want to make sure everyone has it.
No. I'm gonna invite people to actually move forward. It's so lovely how many of you are here, but yet it still seems empty because you've decided to spread out to the four corners. I mean, socially distance appropriately, but you could still go every other row and be a lot closer. Thank you. We'd rather see your faces, hear your voices. It is the same link, but down a few. Huh. Okay. Well, we can only do our best. שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים. שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב. יאללה יאללה לה 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 לה, הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב. יאללה יאללה לה 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 לה, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים. שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים. שבת אחים גם יחד. Welcome everyone. We are in our weekday festival prayer book. If you're joining us on live stream and you hit that prayer book button underneath your screen, you're supposed to scroll down how many books? 2, 3, however many books.
Wherever
it
says
said.
Shabbat, weekday
it says
festival.
Weekday and festivals as opposed to Shabbat. Hopefully it's still there. If not, just be present and enjoy. For the rest of us, we're on page 125 with our festival evening introductory reading. I'm going to do the intro first. Now summer's prospect, the world ripening and growing softer, the promise of harvest fulfilled, the warming sun lies before us. Now the vision of Torah, the world at peace and growing gentler, the promise of goodness fulfilled, the loving heart lies open to the mind. Vayidaber Moshe et Moadei Adonai, Moadai Adonai, and Moses declared the appointed festivals of Adonai to the people of Israel. We are here to celebrate Shavuot, to recognize that revelatory moment where God gave the Torah to the people of Israel, but we're also saying goodbye to Shabbat first. So we're going to share in Havdalah before we leave Shabbat, and then we'll quickly enter into the next festival with maybe like a 30-second time of chol, of intermediary time while Hannah comes up to get ready to light those blessings. So hopefully you have that handout with all the Havdalah blessings on it. And we're gonna, as soon as I light this light, you can start. We're gonna get started.
If you're joining us on live stream and you don't have that Havdalah sheet, because I don't know if it's up, you can also follow along on 346 in the prayer book, or it could be 610 because of the brackets. I'm not sure.
I think it is there, though. I think that I had...
Okay, perfect.
Bob, you have it, right? Did you put it up there?
He did.
Yeah,
okay,
he
cool.
did.
Yeah, Havdalah's up there.
I gave it to Eleanor. Woohoo. We're doing great. It's Saturday night, sorry. Shavua Tov.
30 seconds of hold.
Thank you, Rabbi Yerkin. We're going to turn now to page 121, 385, if you're with us on live stream. And we're going to welcome the festival of Shavuot. It's my pleasure to call up Hannah Margolis to offer the reading before the blessing.
O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Yom Tov.
Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the lights of this festival.
The festival Kiddush is on page 122. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'am, v'romemanu mikol hashon, v'kiddashanu b'mitzvotav. V'titen lanu Adonai Eloheinu b'ahava, moedim l'simcha, chagim uzmanim l'sason. Et yom chag hashavuot hazeh, zman matan torotenu, mikra kodesh zecher litziat mitzrayim, kivanu v'acharta v'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim, u'moedei kodshecha b'simcha uv'sason hinchaltanu, baruch atah Adonai, mikadesh Yisrael ve'hazmanim. And on page 123, please join me in Shehechianu at the bottom. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh.
Amen. You may have noticed that the Kiddush melody was a little different than our Shabbos melody. That's because there are different melodies. It's called nusach, right? Different modes of music that are used to represent different times in the Jewish calendar. That is the melody that we use for all festivals, but the language is slightly different for each of the festivals, as you could see in the prayer book. So there may be some other songs along the way that also sound a little different, and that's because they're using special festival melodies, so that we all know it is Shavuot, but that we recognize liturgically that it is Shavuot as well. We're going to turn to 128 as we rise for the Chatzi Kaddish.
Yitgadol v'yitkadosh shemei Rabba, Amen. Ve'amad yivrach ritei ve'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'vyom echon, uv'chayechon
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, bechokma poteach sha'arim, uvitvuna mishane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umsader et hakochavim, b'mishmerotehem barakira kirtsono, borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or, uma'avir yom umevi layla, umavdil bein yom uvein laila, Adonai tzvaot shemo. El chai v'kayam, tamid imloch aleinu le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. On page 135, we read together the Shavuot reading. Sinai was only the beginning. The Torah has never ceased to grow. In every age, it has been purified and enlarged. It has a permanent core and expanding periphery. It expands as the horizon of our vision grows. Nor are God's revelations confined to Israel. God has been the inspiration of the great and good among all families of the earth. God's love and guidance reach out to all the world. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Mochoto Leolam Vaed. Please be seated. And please join me on page 138 for V'Hafta. V'Hafta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol me'odecha v'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'beitecha v'valachtecha b'derech uv'shachbecha uv'kumecha וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Leot lachem leElohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem emet.
On page 141, at the bottom, we read responsively. Doubting is but the forefront of faith, a faith in the infinite growth of an unbounded creation.
A doubting age is
one of restlessness and discontent with what is current. A doubt is an idea that is still alive.
To doubt that the past has uncovered all things is to express faith that many things are still to be uncovered.
To doubt that we have grown to our full stature and knowledge is to express faith that we may develop into beings of such power and dignity that we cannot as yet imagine what shall be.
Page 145, together. May we lie down this night in peace and rise up to life renewed. May this night spread over us a canopy of calm, lifted by the blessing of rest. There will come a time when the morning will bring no word of war, famine, or anguish. There will come a dawn to rejoice in the peace of mind, heart, and being. Praised are you, the source of renewal within us, for the night's rest and for the promise of peace. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, va'al kol amo Yisrael, va'al Yerushalayim.
On page 204, we rise for the Amidah.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elokei avoteinu v'imotzeinu, Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov, Elokei Sarah, Elokei Rivka, Elokei Rachel, Elokei Leah, Moshia Umagen. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham v'Ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechaye hakol atah Rav leHoshia. Morid atah, Mechakel chaim bechesed, Mechaye hakol berachamim rabim. Somech noflim v'rafeh cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Lishenei afar, Milchamocha ba'al gevurot, Umidor melech, Melech memit umechayeh, Umatzniach Yeshua, Bnei Manat halachayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, Mechaye hakol.
On the top of page 209, we read responsively. Your might, O God, renews the earth. With dewdrops of light and blessing, let the earth be illumined and blessed.
With dewdrops of joy and delight, let the earth rejoice and sing out.
With dewdrops of life and well-being, let the earth be revived and improved.
With dewdrops of redemption, let the earth be redeemed.
Livracha velo likala.
For blessing and not for curse.
L'chaim velo lemovet.
For life and not death.
L'sova velo lerazon.
For abundance, not worth.
Amen.
We turn to page 210 as...
Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yehallelujah selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
Please be seated. On the bottom of page 215. One does not travel to Jerusalem. One returns. One ascends. The road taken by generations, the path of longing on the way to redemption. One brings rucksacks stuffed with memories to each mountain and each hill. And the cobbled white alleyways, one offers a blessing for memories of the past which have been renewed. One does not travel to Jerusalem. One returns. On page 216. Our God and God of our ancestors, be mindful of your people Israel and recall your merit for good and grace, and in loving kindness and compassion for life and peace on this festival of Shavuot.
Zochreinu Adonai Eloheinu bo letova.
This day remember us for well-being. Amen.
Ufokteinu bo livracha.
This day bless us with your nearness. Amen.
V'hoshienu bo lechaim.
This day help us to a fuller life.
Amen.
Amen.
Together on the bottom of 218. Bestow upon us the blessing of your holy festivals, and may we so celebrate them as to be worthy of your blessing. Our God and God of our ancestors, make us holy with your mitzvot, and let your Torah be our way of life. May our rest on this day be pleasing in your sight. Satisfy us with your goodness, gladden us with your salvation, and purify our hearts to serve you in truth. Let your holy festivals remain our heritage, and let us celebrate them with joy so that all Israel, hallowing your name, may have cause to rejoice. We praise you, Adonai, who sanctifies the house of Israel and the festivals. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim. We turn now to 223 or 487 online. Sorry, haven't been saying those numbers. Together. Our ancestors acclaimed the God whose handiwork they read in the mysterious heavens above and in the varied scene of earth below, in the orderly march of days and nights, of seasons and years, and in the checkered fate of humankind. Lift up your eyes, look up. Who made these stars? Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'eh lehodot.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha.
we just asked for peace and blessings of peace from God, we think of those who are looking for blessings of healing, those who are in need of healing of mind, of body, and of spirit. We think of them and whisper their names aloud now. The words to Misha Berach can be found on page 247 or 511 if you're online.
Please take a moment for your own silent meditations.
We are going to share in a brief text study. I got it. Maybe. Maybe not. Thank you. Give you some. Marina some. Give you some too. Light on the text and heavy on the explanation about what Shavuot is all about. As we mentioned at the beginning, this is the holiday that we celebrate receiving Torah at Mount Sinai, but the word Shavuot translates as weeks, right? And also, this is one of our pilgrimage festivals. There are 3 pilgrimage festivals. This is actually the second one, though we like to think of Sukkot as the first one because it's right after Rosh Hashanah. It's actually the third of the festivals, just to confuse you. I thought it would be interesting, hopefully, for all of you to take a little bit of a deeper dive into the context of what this holiday is all about. So we'll start with just a little bit of an explanation.
Shavuot, occurring on the 6th and 7th of Sivan, is the second of the 3 pilgrimage festivals. Like the other pilgrimage festivals, it commemorates an important event in the history of the Jewish people. It has an agricultural reference, marking a stage in the harvest, and it imparts an essential religious truth.
I really enjoy this framing of the festivals, right? Which is a moment in history, right, that we want to remember, a moment in the agricultural cycle having to do with a particular festival, and some greater religious truth, right? That's what transforms it from something that happened long ago and might not be relevant to us. We personally are not that concerned about the wheat and the barley harvests. Maybe we are these days, I don't know. We're concerned about every harvest. But that there's this higher religious truth that we are compelled to consider. Okay, so first, so here you have we're going to talk about our agricultural references briefly, talk about the historic event, and then, of course, the essential religious truth. So Exodus 23:16 and Exodus 34:22 are our agricultural references. Jeremy, go for it.
And the feast of harvest, the first fruits of your labors, which you sow in the field. And you shall observe the Feast of Weeks, even the first fruits of the wheat harvest.
Right, so it turns out that this agricultural festival has 2 different names. What are those names? The festival has 2 names. Go for it.
Hag Hakatzir, and because of its agricultural aspect, and Hag as Hashuvot, which does not indicate any characteristics of the festival except the date, i.e. that it comes after the counting of 7 weeks.
Right, so the reason we call it Shavuot, thank you, is because we have counted 7 weeks plus 1 day from the end of Pesach to this moment. It's the time between the two holidays and the 2 harvests, right, where we have been counting the Omer. So the weeks of the Omer counting are over. It is now the festival of Shavuot, but also because it is a harvest, it is a Chag HaKatzir. Okay, so we understand that from an agricultural context, it fits in the Torah. It makes sense in the way, if you've ever been to Israel or lived in Israel, in the way that the seasons play out there, very similarly actually to the way they play out here in San Antonio, Texas. So we're kind of, just like it's hot here, it's hot there. When winter's kind of ending here, that's when winter's ending there. Even though back where I come from on the East Coast and where Rabbi Jürgen and Cantor Berlin come from, which is Chicago, it's still really, really cold when we celebrate Tu B'Shvat. Not so much in Israel, right? Okay, so agricultural reference. Number 2, historic event. We know what that historic event is supposed to be. Anyone? The 10 Commandments, the giving of the law at Mount Sinai. Absolutely. So, right, according to the rabbis of the Talmud, the 10 Commandments were given on the 6th day of Sivan. Shavuot thus is Zman Matan Toratenu, commemorating this event and emphasizing the Torah's sanctity. So now we're going to read a little Talmud.
Our rabbis taught on the 6th day of the month were the 10 Commandments given to Israel. Rabbi Jose?
Not Jose.
Yossi.
Yosa.
Rabbi Jose.
We need to put it in there a little bit better.
I'm going to spell it Y-O-S-I next time.
Right, yeah.
Rabbi Jose, so
Give me
it's
a
okay.
break, give me a break. Yeah.
Rabbi Jose maintains.
Rabbi Yosa maintained, on the 7th thereof, said Rabbah, all agreed that they arrived in the wilderness of Sinai on the 1st of the month. For here it is written, on this day they came into the wilderness of Sinai.
And by the way, we actually were talking not about this Exodus text, but we were talking about in Torah study this morning about this shift, right, from being at the bottom of Mount Sinai and entering into the wilderness, right? Because we just finished receiving the Torah.
And then I talked about this verse specifically this morning in the text study.
It's all connected.
Okay. While elsewhere it is written, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. Just as there were the first of the month, so here too, the first of the month is meant. Again, all agree that the Torah was given to Israel on the Sabbath. For here it is written, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. While elsewhere it is written, and Moses said unto the people, remember this day. Just as there, he spoke on that very day, so here too it was on that very day.
So like the Talmud in general, pretty confusing, right? But you can see how important it is to the rabbis, whether it's Rabbi Jose or Rabbi Rava or Rabbah, right? That they figure out the exact moment when they stood at Sinai and received that Torah. I love the idea that it had to have been on Shabbat, right? That is the holiest day that we celebrate every single week. And that it's important for us to zachor et hayom, to remember the day. Here we are, remembering the day. Okay, now we get to, not that that all wasn't fun, but this is the fun part to me, right? What is the essential religious truth? Why is it that this festival still has meaning to us beyond, or include, to, what's the word I'm looking for? To amplify, that is the word, amplify the grandeur of receiving Torah at Sinai. What does that really mean for us? Because that happened a long time ago. Okay, Mel, you're gonna read the Arnold Eisen.
Rabbi Arnold Eisen, the Exodus leads to Sinai. Tribute to Pharaoh gives way to tribute to God. Our recollection of God's promises to Israel at Passover is joined via the Omer to our recollection of the fulfillment experienced by the Israelites in their land as they offered the first fruits of our redemption.
So, right, like Passover, which I know seems like a million years ago, but it was only 50 days ago. We were celebrating our redemption from freedom, right? And now we get to celebrate receiving the Torah, but we wouldn't be here, right, if we hadn't been freed. We were serving Pharaoh, now we serve God. And in October, when we celebrate Sukkot, that is a festival that took place while the people were in the wilderness, right? And they needed to thank God for giving them shelter even in the midst of their wandering. So we understand that all of these festivals build upon each other, and they build upon the theology, the master story of the Jewish people, from slavery to redemption, or from slavery to redemption, and here to Revelation. Okay? All right, Michael Strassfield, part 1.
Even if there is no ritualized recreation of the event we are commemorating, as there is with Passover and Sukkot, Shavuot calls upon us to remember the event and reaffirm our commitment to Torah and its study. It also urges us until the very last moment to prepare ourselves as though Sinai will occur again this very Shavuot. The self-preparation, which began during the Omer and intensified during the month of Sivan, reaches even greater intensity during Shavuot, leading up to the reading of the 10 Commandments on Shavuot morning.
So I think for me, this is interesting. Strassfield is pointing out to us that on Passover, we reenact the Exodus, right? We have our Seder meal. There are some Jewish cultural traditions where people literally stand ready to run. Not Ashkenazi tradition, but there are all different kinds of ways that people play it out. Sukkot, we dwell in booths to remind ourselves how our ancestors dwelled in booths while they were in the wilderness, but we don't have that kind of commemoration for Shavuot. That's why, by the way, people like to eat blintzes on Shavuot because they look like little Torah scrolls if they're right next to each other. Yeah, true story, true story. Jews can be silly too. It's kitschy, yeah, it is. I was like, really? Is that a thing? It is a thing. But also, I know we're here at a lovely hour of 10 to 7, but traditionally you're supposed to observe Shavuot at midnight, right? Because the idea is that, that we're gonna receive that revelation once again. And so we, as Strassfield says, we're preparing ourselves just in case it's gonna happen. And so we wanna be present at that moment when the dawn breaks to be able to receive that Torah at Sinai. And in some communities, they have a Tikkun Leil Shavuot. We're going to have a Tikkun Leil Shavuot at 7:15. But in some communities, that is an all-night affair, especially in Israel. And in traditional Jewish communities, you can go and find people studying all through the night. And I remember living in Jerusalem, and then at like 3 or 4 in the morning, you would go down to the Western Wall so that you could daven Shachrit as the dawn rose, hoping God would show up at the temple. Hasn't happened yet, but we are eternal optimists. Okay, so yeah.
And now you can go and study all night. There are lots of groups that do all night studies. So if you do like a Google search, Rav Google, if you will, different than Rav Jose, you can go and find different opportunities for study all night if you so desire to stay awake all night.
Yeah, or you could just, stay up till midnight or 1 a.m. I mean, God bless you, more power to you. I will definitely be asleep by then. Okay, and so our final Michael Strassfield.
Why did God insist that Moses warn the people not to go up on the mountain itself? By implication, it teaches us that a mystical union with God is impossible. Although there are momentary encounters with the divine, Sinai being the classic one for the Jewish people, they are temporary. As human beings, we must return to humanity, to the world. We cannot dwell in Sinai, the mountain we are not even allowed to ascend. We do not go up to Sinai. Sinai, the divine, comes down to us, as it says, "The Lord came down upon Mount Sinai on the top of the mountain." The working out of Sinai, the living in its after effects, takes place here in an imperfect world that calls out for perfection.
Right, Jewish people are not supposed to be monks. Jewish people are not supposed to remove themselves from the rest of the community. We are supposed to be together. In all our imperfections, that is how we serve God. In the book of Exodus, when we receive revelation, God says, tell the people, don't come up on the mountain. And that's what Strassfield is referring to, because it is not where we're supposed to be. God comes to us, we don't go there. There's a Talmudic story about the 4 sages who went to paradise. One died, one went insane, one left Judaism altogether, and only Rabbi Akiva was able to be actually in God's presence and return unscathed, or at least not destroyed. That's not our job. Our job is not to do everything in our power to go beyond the world we're in. We're supposed to take what God has taught us. We're supposed to take the revelation from Sinai and make it real in our world every single day. So we're going to finish our service. We're going to eat, if those of you who are staying for dinner and study, we're going to eat some dairy, because, that's what Jews do on Shavuot. We're going to study a little more about God. And hopefully you're able to come back and join us tomorrow morning for a 10:30 service, where we will read the 10 Commandments or chant the 10 Commandments. Yeah, chant a part of them. And celebrate Revelation in that way as well. For now, I'll ask you to rise and turn to Aleinu on page 323, also on 587 online.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שהוא שם חלקנו לייחד את שמו, וגור עלינו להמליך מלכותו. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ.
may be seated. Well, yeah, it's okay. You'll stand up quickly, but it's okay. Page 329 or 593 online. Our memorial meditation. In nature's ebb and flow, God's eternal law abides. When tears dim our vision or grief clouds our understanding, we often lose sight of God's eternal plan. Yet we know that growth and decay, life and death, all reveal a divine purpose. God, who is our support in the struggles of life, is also our hope in death. We have set God before us and shall not despair. In God's hands are the souls of all the living and the spirits of all flesh. Under God's protection we abide, and by God's love are we comforted. O life of our life, soul of our soul, cause your light to shine into our hearts and fill our spirits with abiding trust in you. We turn now to page 334 or 598, rising together as one community for Kaddish Yatom. Yitzkadal v'yitzkadash shemei rabba, be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayachon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei l'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kari v'imru, amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevorach le'olam umei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitzadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha b'rechu, Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, ta'amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Osei shalom b'imromav, u'ya'asei shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, to which we say, Amen.
Our closing song in celebration of our festival is Livracha on page 399. Chag Sameach, Erev Tov. For those staying for dinner and study, we are in the block conference room A.